I'm joined by Olivia Wilde. Olivia, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's an honor. I'm so happy.
And thanks for picking this double feature, which we'll get to momentarily. You came into this business as an actor. You're a director now. Do you still consider yourself an actor-director, or are you a director-actor?
Oh, good question. Well, I started as a casting assistant.
Well, I'm assuming you're not doing a lot of that anymore.
No, hopefully directing mostly now.
You enjoy directing, not so more than acting, but directing. Do you feel like this is it? This is the thing you really want to do?
It's the best job in the world.
Did your experience as an actor, it must have informed how you are as a director?
Completely, because I feel like I'm multilingual. Part of directing is just communicating, which I think acting really is what that's about, is listening and communicating. And I think that acting should be an essential part of the directing training process.
2019, Booksmart.
Yes.
2022, Don't Worry, Darling. Mm-hmm. This is TCM. I'm convinced that I'm going to say Move Over, Darling. But Don't Worry, Darling. Both well received. Did you know that you wanted to direct throughout the body of your acting career?
Yes. I took every opportunity to shadow directors and DPs. And, as an actor, you are not privy to so much of what makes a production work. There is this kind of arbitrary separation between actors and crew, when really we're all crew. And I started to kind of blur those lines and say, well, hang on, who built this set? How does that happen? And so then I started learning from the production designers and art directors and started really asking questions. I mean, I think of the people who took time out of their busy schedules to answer this actress's questions over and over and over again. I'm so grateful because I started to understand what it really takes to make a movie, and that is so exciting.
You've programmed an intriguing double feature for us. The connection seems quite clear. In a couple of hours, we'll have the 1975 documentary, one of the seminal documentaries of its era, Grey Gardens from the Maysles brothers. But first, from Warner Brothers in 1958, Auntie Mame with Rosalind Russell. Why'd you program these films together? What draws you to them?
Well, I love that the connection between these two films, even though they seem on the surface very different. One's a documentary, one is classic Warner Brothers 50s Technicolor film, but they're about eccentric women. Yeah. They're about true individuals. And one almost seems like the sort of darker, real life version of the other. As a child, when I first saw Rosalind Russell in Auntie Mame, I understood that it was about someone bucking the confines of society and a true individual. And it was about a kind of decadence that was something that I understood was aspirational. And I feel that Grey Gardens is about people who lived that life at some point and maybe in their minds continue to do so. Or this is the life that they actually want, and we just don't understand it because it doesn't fit sort of our expectations. I think that's the heart of Auntie Mame, is that she is living a life that is totally rejected by society, which is kind of the point Morton DaCosta makes over and over in the film, that everyone thinks she's outrageous. But of course, as the audience, you root for her.
Give people who maybe haven't seen it, or
yes.
in TCM sense, people
yes.
who've seen it 15 times,
yes.
something that strikes you that maybe they could look for.
Rosalind Russell made this film when she was 50 years old and allowed the world and certainly Hollywood to understand that a middle-aged woman could still really crush. And she is so fantastic in the role. And I think that the film is kind of revolutionary. I think that what they did in terms of the opulence of the production design and the character development, that is really pretty unusual. And they really are making fun of society in a way that at the time was still pretty ballsy. Now, what I will say is that the film is a fantasy in that it treats, the Depression as a kind of minor speed bump.
Small roadblock, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
In the film,
yeah, that's right.
Her loyal servants still stay with her unpaid, right. And it is a fantasy, but in a way, it also is an incredibly loving portrait about family. And that's another connection the two films obviously have. But I think Auntie Mame is the best of Hollywood opulence of that era. From costumes to production design to the performances, it just blows it out of the water.
Jan Hiltzik, who played young Patrick.
Yes.
Taking nothing away from older Patrick, but young Patrick. And Jan had this role on Broadway too with Roz Russell. He's
Yes,
so
which
good.
I think you can tell. They
Yeah.
obviously love each other. He feels very safe with her. They have such great banter. And he really created a character. He's hilarious in the film as the kind of perfect child.
Yeah.
Like, this is the child all our grandparents really wanted to have. That, like, when he opens his gift and she's given him, like, long pants for his birthday, and he's like, "Wowee, Auntie Mame, can I try them on now? Can I?" And he, like, runs away, and she's like, dream. And I always think, like, that is, again, a fantasy.
Long pants.
Long pants! And I was
the-
like, man.
Not the gift kids
Wow.
today really get excited
No,
about.
my kids wouldn't be as psyched.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting because the end of the film is, of course, victorious because she's found a rich boyfriend.
It is, I'm sorry, it is a little abrupt when he falls off the cliff.
He falls off the cliff, and yet it's like she doesn't really mind. It's like she's had this adventure with him. She's kind of okay. In the very end, you get the sense like she knows she's happy because she wants an adventure buddy. When I was a kid, I was like, I want to go live with her. I want to leave school and go like hike and
Sure, with someone who thinks Labor Day is in November.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's in the middle
I mean,
of
the opening scene, her first scene of the cocktail party,
So good.
is one of the greatest scenes of all time.
Where it tells you, I mean, we learn in 2 minutes. Like,
Exactly.
everything about this character that's going to be incredibly consistent through what it would, 2 hours, 20 minutes. Yeah.
Exactly. She announces from the top of the stairs there's more gin coming. She doesn't know who the party's for. It's a constant influx of guests. And I think that she is revolutionary in that aspect because at the time, an unmarried woman without children would have been a bit of a pariah.
Roz Russell always played strong characters so effectively.
Exactly.
You know, to get back to Beauregard's death.
Yes.
When he falls off the mountain. It strikes me that Morton DaCosta was an interesting choice because we're making a movie now. They could shoot
Yeah.
something. They could show
Yeah.
him slip. Obviously, they're not going to show a terrible death scene. But clearly to me, and I don't know this to be true, but clearly to me it was handled exactly the same way it was on the stage.
On stage, it's
with a
so
shot of
true.
her and the sound, which is just how I imagine that would have happened.
It's so true. I wonder how much they learned from what worked on Broadway.
Right.
I think about this in every kind of film adaptation of a play. It's like, what was clearly the way that the audience got the joke in the most effective way and that they then mimicked? I think there's no better way to tell that story that wouldn't make it tragic in a distracting way. The point is...
Right. We don't want it to feel too tragic
Exactly.
to break the flow of
Yeah.
how we feel about her and this movie.
Yeah, and I think like we were a little bit relieved that she doesn't have to deal with his family and all that and anymore.
They were great.
They were great.
Yeah.
He has a really problematic line earlier in the film, which really stuck out to me the last time I watched it, where she says about her kind of staff in the apartment. She's like, "This is my family," and he says like, "Oh, I have fields and fields of family." And
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
Beauregard, no.
Bo.
Bo. So
Yeah.
when he falls off the cliff, there's part of you that's like, I'm okay with it. He is not set up to be this perfect angelic
No,
character.
that's right.
He's just someone who allows her to live this kind
live
of
the life
fantastic
that we-
life.
right.
But they do build the tension of him slowly going higher and higher up the
totally.
mountain.
Yeah,
So
they
you
do.
know
Yeah.
something bad's going to
Yeah,
happen.
totally. We discussed you came to people's attention as an actor, became a director. But let's go back a little further. Where are you from?
I'm from Washington, D.C.
Where'd you go to school up until 8th grade?
I went to Georgetown Day School.
Georgetown Day School. That's interesting. So you left, you went kindergarten through 8th?
Kindergarten through 8th.
I went kindergarten through 12th.
So amazing.
It's a great school. It really formed who I am. You are the
Same.
most famous person to have gone to GDS, just to be clear.
So proud.
Father Irish, he's a journalist. Your mother's a journalist.
Yes.
You visited Ireland all the time as a kid.
Yeah, I'm a dual citizen, and I felt just as Irish as American. And my parents were both war correspondents and documentarians and authors, and that was kind of how I discovered documentaries because our basement of our house in DC was an editing suite.
No, really.
So it was
Wow.
like the old
Yeah.
Avid. So I grew up to the sounds of like they were cutting. My mom worked at 60 Minutes for years.
right.
It was fascinating to be a kid sitting on the carpet watching them cut these pieces. And it was how I fell in love with documentaries.
And documentaries, such a big part of your life growing up. So
Yes.
it makes some sense that the film we have here from the Maysles brothers in 1975, Grey Gardens,
And I think Grey Gardens is one of the great documentaries. And the Maysles brothers essentially just became flies on the wall where they were observing these two incredibly eccentric women.
So they definitely are flies on the wall. We're going to talk about whether it was exploitative. We'll wait to have that at the end. It's an interesting conversation anyway. But while they do make themselves flies on the wall, the idea is to shoot everything. They also, within, as you'll see, within the first 45 seconds or a minute, they make their presence known to the audience. Like the second voice you hear in the documentary is David Maysles. And so they're like, oh, they're here and they're shooting. And the fact that they are shooting is acknowledged. And I think that's a very critical decision.
It's absolutely critical. And I think that they make it clear and they're acknowledging that there is an effect they're having on this environment, which very rarely has visitors. So just by the nature of entering the space, they're changing the chemistry. And it is still incredibly restrained in terms of what they capture. You see that they let this they let this performance happen around them, but acknowledging that in a way they are being performed for.
Right. They are affecting it.
Yes.
But what we still see is authentic. I mean, it's really something. I don't want to give too much away, and obviously people will pick it up right away. But this is a 77-year-old woman and her 55-year-old daughter in a house they've lived in East Hampton full time. This is not their summer home.
What is incredible is they're incredibly unencumbered by any sort of societal expectations in the way that they dress or undress. Big Edie is often seen sunbathing nude, or the way that they dance and sing. They don't live by the
and even by the way they argue with each other.
Oh, by the way they argue.
A lot of arguing.
And yet, the way that they just live on their own kind of clock. This house has 29 rooms. They stay together in a small bedroom. Yeah. The love story is really profound. It's also significant that it was made by brothers, the film, about this family, a mother and daughter. There's a kind of family affair, sort of intimacy that you feel from both sides of the camera. I believe that Grey Gardens is almost the, what could be argued as the kind of like real life version of Auntie Mame. I believe that in at least Big Edie's head, she is living as Mame. They're both stories about eccentric women.
See squalor. Big Edie doesn't see that
at all.
Yeah.
Little Edie is frustrated mostly by the kind of like politics of the neighborhood. Right. She wants to go and live in the city and live this amazing kind of free life, which she eventually did after the film.
Yeah, she says, any little rat hole, even on 10th Avenue would be better.
Yes, they're real New Yorkers is what I love about
real New Yorkers.
But one of the famous lines from Auntie Mame is, life is a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death. And I think you can imagine that line being said by Big Edie in Grey Gardens.
So there's a lot of arguing in this. I don't like it when people talk over each other. Like in my life, when my daughter, my wife, I'm like, stop! But you get used to it. It's part of the communication of and they're almost like having separate, they're saying full sentences while the other person is talking.
They can hear each other. Yeah, that's what's amazing. They can hear each other while they're speaking.
Right, they're sort of responding, and they're...
I always think when I watch this film, you could never write this. I mean, maybe like Robert Altman, you could just, it would be really tricky.
It would be a Robert Altman film.
It would be a Robert Altman film, but like be really tricky to perform. Any actor would really struggle. And of course, they have made narrative versions of this film, but I think what's so hard to nail is that they are completely in their own heads, and yet they're completely connected. They don't miss a beat of each other's words.
That last fight that we see, their last argument, that one's a little bit heartbreaking. And, of course, we don't know what's true.
The filmmakers never explain that for us.
That's right. We
don't go to any sort of like footage or photography or any sort of text or any voiceover that explains what really happened.
No,
it doesn't
all
matter.
we get is old newspaper clippings that they just sort of pan over. That's it.
They each have their own narrative. Yeah. We don't know if Big Edie was protecting Little Edie, which I always get the sense that Little Edie needed to come home and be protected by her mother just as much as her mother needed to be protected by her daughter. But that fight, it's an example of leaving the audience in a place of curiosity. We don't really need to know. It's sort of their business. What we know is what their versions of the narrative are now.
The sense of who the Maysles brothers were comes through in how they found Big Edie and Little Edie. So Lee Radswell, who was Jackie Kennedy's sister and a cousin to Little Edie, hired them to do a story on the Bouvier family.
Yes.
Right? And in that process, the Maysles brothers met Big Edie and Little Edie, and they were like, how are we going to do this?
Like any great filmmaker,
Right, yeah.
they pivoted towards the more interesting story.
And Lee Radswell was like, no, she kept all that footage,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so they went back and
They
started
went,
over.
raised
Yeah.
money and they went back.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to do that now. I think often when you go raise money to make a documentary, people want to know the story and the structure, and they kind of want to know the ending. When the whole point of the art form is to ask questions without knowing the ending.
You sound like you probably have a documentary in you
Yes.
at some point.
Yes, I would love to. But I think it takes real courage to shoot one like The Maisels. I don't know if I could do that. I think I'm too heavy-handed. I think I would try to manipulate what the audience was feeling as opposed to just like letting it happen.
There's been a lot of criticism of them. I mean, first of all, they're acknowledged as seminally important documentarians. There's no doubt about that. But, they weren't flies on the wall as much as they would have had you believe. There are those who think that this was exploitative.
Sure.
I take it I can tell you're not in that camp.
I'm not, because
Neither am I, by the way.
I don't watch the film and think and laugh at them in a way
But
that
there's some stuff that's funny, but I don't feel like I'm laughing at them.
no, I'm quite inspired by them as people. I understand that they've been dealt a really kind of unfair hand in life. I watch it and wish that they could have Auntie Mame's riches so that they could like live the dreams that they deserve. I don't want them to change anything about themselves except not be forced to move out of their house because it's been
Do you
condemned.
feel like if somebody gave them $2.5 million, they'd still live in the same room?
I think they would absolutely live in the same room, but they would maybe live without the stress of being told they have to leave. I mean, the fleas that they talk about in the film, like, oh, this house is full of fleas. I mean, little Edie constantly derides the house, the conditions in the house. She's saying, I can't take it, I can't take it, I can't take it here anymore. So it's something that she wants to draw attention to, that she wants to break out of this cage, and yet there's Big Edie saying it's beautiful, and I had a beautiful marriage, and I have a beautiful house. It's so interesting. They just have two different perspectives on the exact same life, and yet this is the only way they can really live. I think that it's complex in the way that any good film should be. It leaves you asking questions as opposed to having conclusions. And I understand the argument that there's something about it that's really sad.
Yeah, there's definitely something about it that's sad.
But I also celebrate any illustration or depiction of individuality like that. And I think there's something really romantic about their kind of decadent individualism. And I feel inspired by it.
Olivia Wilde, this has been fascinating. I've learned so much. This has been one of the great conversations I've had. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor.